It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Smooth and Savvy is joined by some of the hottest talent in the entertainment industry, from musicians to authors and all those in between. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Mr. Smooth and Savvy himself, Douglas Coleman.
Howdy, howdy, ho, hey, hee, ha. Hi, ho, hi, ho, hi, ho. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are you? If you've ever thought that your apartment or your house was too small for you and you felt a bit cramped, my first guest will probably be of some interest to you. Her name is Felice Cohen, and for a while she lived in Manhattan. I think she still lives in Manhattan, but she's moved. But for a while she was living in a 90-square-foot apartment that measured about 12 feet by 7 feet and had one room, basically, with a loft bed and a bathroom that was about the size of a phone booth. She said the location was fantastic. She was on the Upper West Side, I think. Realized that there was just so much stuff in her life that she didn't really need to have. A big scale down in her personal effects. Her video of the tour of the apartment went viral big time on YouTube. She got over 12 million views and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. It's a cool video. It's short. It's only about 5 or 6 minutes long, but it gave the grand tour of her one-room place. So she will be up first, followed by Chad Meek, who is the writer and producer of Giant Rock. Giant Rock was a book which is going to be turned into a film. The book and the movie are science fiction, but they're based on true events and are designed to entertain as well as inform. So he will be up on the second part of the show. Before we get to Felice, we have a couple of songs from Music X-Ray Submissions. First one up is called 1982, the number 1982, like the year, by Joe Bell, B-E-L-L-E, followed by Memphis Blues, which is an instrumental by Paul Blissett. Paul has been on the show before with a song. I really like Paul's music, so we're going to feature a second one. This one, again, is called Memphis Blues. So we will be right back with the music and then straight into the interviews.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
In-house production and recording in Louisiana Publishing Company is now offering a special for podcasters on their CD Pro Radio network. For just $20 a month, CD Pro Radio will broadcast your podcast twice a week on their network. This is a great and inexpensive opportunity for podcasters to gain some exposure for their show without having to spend a lot of money. Please check them out at cdproradio.com. That's cdproradio.com.
Tell me that you want secure, just give it to all my love, love. I want to give you all my love, sweet baby. Don't you wanna give your love to me, sweet sugar? Don't you ever give my love away, sweet honey. I won't never ever give yours away, sweet lover. Just give me all your love. 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 Give me all your love. Just give me all your love. Just give me all your love. I want to give you all my love, sweet baby. Don't you wanna give your love to me, sweet sugar? Don't you ever give my love away, sweet honey. I won't never ever give yours away, sweet lover. Hey, see, this is what Joe Bell likes to call that feel good music. Don't it feel good to you? Let it marinate. I want to give you all my love, sweet baby. Don't you wanna give your love to me, sweet sugar? Don't you ever give my love away, sweet honey. I won't never ever give yours away.
Okay, please welcome Felice Cohen. Hi, Felice. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Doing well. A lot of stuff on your bio here. Very interesting. I'm dying to get to your tiny apartment. But before we get to that, if you wouldn't mind, you did write a book called What Papa Told Me, and it sounds very interesting. Can you just tell us a little bit of background about your grandfather and the story there?
Sure. So my grandfather, both my grandparents on my mother's side were Holocaust survivors. And I was in college when I discovered that my grandmother had committed suicide. I always was told she died of cancer. So when I found that out, I went to my grandfather and he told me why she committed suicide, but he had to talk about another subject he had never spoken about, and that was the Holocaust. So that began our discussion. And I wrote about my grandmother in college, and that's when my grandfather said, I want you to tell my story. And I had no idea at the time it would be a book. And we worked on it off and on together for about 18 years. And it's about his life before, during, and after the war, and the struggles he went through and what he overcame. And, I wrote it really as a gift for him. I had no idea I would sell any copies. And it's sold now almost 30,000 copies. It was endorsed by Elie Wiesel. And the best thing about it was it really validated for my grandfather his survival and what it meant for him to really kind of keep persevering for his family. He just passed away a few months ago, and right before he died, he just said, my granddaughter wrote a book, and he spoke with me in schools after never speaking about it for all those years. It was finally a weight lifted off of him.
Wow. Now, where were they from?
So they both lived in Poland. They didn't know each other before the war. My grandmother was in Lodz, which became the famous Lodz ghetto. She ended up in Auschwitz. My grandfather was in 8 different camps, and they both met during liberation in Bergen-Belsen.
It's difficult, I think, for some people to even talk about it. I know I've talked to other people whose parents or grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and I don't know, a lot of them, they don't even want to deal with it. It's like some very repressed memory that they just would rather forget.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. I think it's important that people know exactly what happened, especially the longer it goes. Now it's becoming sort of ancient history. But I think it's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that people don't forget about that. All right. Well, your new book is called 90 Lessons for Living Large in 90 Square Feet or More. And I watched your video, and I thought your video was great. Your video has huge stats on YouTube. You've got 12 million views. You've got 400,000 subscribers. Now, did the video go viral before you did? I mean, it says you've been on Fox, you've been on CBS, you've been on all kinds of things. Did the video go viral first, or did it go viral after you've been on all those shows?
Yeah, it went viral first. And after it went viral, it was a couple of years ago, and it was kind of at the beginning of this tiny house movement. And the woman who made the video, she makes videos of small apartments all over the world. But this one really just seemed to touch a nerve with people. And I think it's kind of one of the reasons is because of this tiny house movement is growing. People are seeing the benefits of living with less. And I think that's, I talk about that in the video, and I think that's what kind of made the video stand out more than the others.
Well, yeah, it really was a good video. I mean, it was just like 5 minutes long, and it was just perfect. I watched it a couple of times, actually. And I used to live in New York City in the early 80s. I was a struggling actor at that point, was going to school. And I was living in a rooming house down on East 23rd Street with no bathroom, shared bathroom. And I tell you, the clientele that lived in this rooming house, it's not the type of people you'd really want to share a bathroom with. It just it was awful. And at the time, it was $45 a week, which I know sounds really cheap, but back in the early 80s, that wasn't as cheap. And I think I would have loved to have had a place like that. Now, the place is 12 feet by 7 feet, which isn't big. I mean, that's the size of like a small bedroom in a normal house, I would say. Yeah.
It's a little smaller than that, actually. It's if it's 7.5 feet by 12 feet. And if Michael Jordan, his wingspan is 7.5 inches, 7.5 feet. So his arms spread out. So I drew it on my parents' driveway once, and my Honda Accord fit perfectly inside of it. So so we were trying to figure out how small it was.
Okay, so if Michael Jordan was in your apartment, he could touch both walls by just sticking his hands out like that. Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Plus, I would have been so happy. But yeah.
I know that the micro apartment movement gained a lot of footing in New York fairly recently. Wasn't there a lot of building code kind of things that had to be changed? I mean, there were minimums to what you could call a studio apartment, had to be certain size, had to have a stove, had to have a full tub. I mean, weren't there just a lot of restrictions in New York City about that had to be changed?
Yeah, no, there were, and the minimum size I think was 400, and they said they would be able to go under it. So these are about 300, 350, and the problem I think with these tiny micro units is that the prices are pretty steep. Because the whole point for me of living small was that it was affordable.
Right.
When I moved into this 90 square foot apartment, I was paying $700 a month, which now in New York is really like free.
Yeah.
But these are upwards of a couple thousand.
The micro apartments that I've seen, you're saying those go for $2,000 a month?
Some are expensive, yeah. So they had some of the restrictions that they did. They had a certain number of rooms that went to you had to be in a lottery, you had to make a certain amount of money, and the others they went to vets, which was great to have housing for our vets. But also then there were a number of apartments that were very expensive, and they came with all these other amenities that you would find in a larger apartment. But they did a study, the New York Post did a great article on it, and showed that per square footage they were paying a lot more than some people, in a doorman building on the Upper East Side.
So where is this apartment that's in the video?
I'm sorry, where's what?
Where is it? I mean, where's it located in Manhattan?
Oh, my apartment
Right.
or
yeah,
these new ones?
No, the one in your video.
That apartment was 70th and Columbus.
70th.
Which is,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, West 70th. It's right near Central Park and Lincoln Center.
So it's a great neighborhood where you were, yeah?
Yeah, they were about, studios there about $2,600 a month.
Now, do you still live there?
I was evicted after being on Good Morning America. The landlord said, that's not the name on the lease. So I was subletting. Apparently I wasn't supposed to.
Oh. How did you find that place in the first place?
I found it through a friend. I had been looking, and I was looking on the Upper East Side because a realtor said your money goes farther, but really it went faster. They were so expensive. And then out of the blue, a friend I hadn't talked to in a while said she had a friend looking to sublet her place. She warned it was really small. I didn't believe her until I actually saw it. It was a 5th floor walk-up, but I only planned to stay in New York for 1 year. I wanted to finish my grandfather's book. And I put 77 boxes of stuff into storage. I figured after that, I would get another job. I had just quit my job so I could write for a year. And when the year came to an end, my life had changed so drastically. Suddenly I had more free time, less stress, less expenses. I could write more and ride my bike more, and life just seemed good. So I said yes, year after year. After year, I stayed for 5 years.
Did you find it claustrophobic at first?
The very first night, I had a panic attack in that tiny bed. I fell asleep. I was so exhausted from walking the stairs and unpacking. And I had a friend stay over because I thought I'd fall out of the loft bed. And I fell right asleep. I woke a few hours later, and there was the ceiling and the walls and my friend. And I just kind of leapt out of the bed. I don't know how I didn't break my neck. And I was pacing, which in that small space was like walking in a circle. And I just thought, how do I get out of this? What am I going to do? And my friend just reminded me why I had moved into that space. And it was just so I could finish my first book about my grandfather. And then I thought about all my grandfather had been in, and this was paradise compared to what he did. And I thought, I can do this for a year.
Well, I really liked the place, but the one thing that I noticed that would be a problem for me was the bathroom. If you've traveled outside of the United States, a lot of places don't have tubs. They just have a kind of a shower that maybe there's like a curtain or something between the sink and the shower. And your place had a tub, correct?
Correct. Full tub.
Yeah. So it's almost like the tub would be in the way for me. Also, when you did the bit on the video where you sat down on the toilet and your knees are kind of banging against the thing, that would just sort of drive me crazy about you'd sort of have to sit sideways on the toilet. The place
I was teasing a little.
But the place itself was great. I mean, the loft bed wouldn't bother me. The actual room was terrific, the way you had it organized. You also said that you're a professional organizer and have been for over 20 years. Was this actually a job that you had? Is there a market for professional organizers?
Yeah, no, there is a job people do. They're professional organizers, especially in New York City when space is at such a premium. So before I moved to New York, I knew I wanted to kind of maybe move to New York and write. And then I saw on TV that this woman was an organizer. And I said, I've been doing that in dorm rooms. I've been doing that for friends' closets for years. So I thought that's what I'll do to pay the rent. And for the first few years, that's what I did. I was in brownstones, townhouses, lofts, small apartments, billionaires, rock stars, supermodels, all kinds of people.
Give me an example of what you would do. I mean, assuming that their apartment is not a complete mess, what would you do to help them out?
Well, it depends. Everything was different. We'd help people do a move. So we'd help categorize all their stuff and help it get packed and then unpack it when they move to the new place. Or if they wanted help organizing their closets, to maybe go through their clothes and help get that thinned out. Maybe they needed their kitchen reorganized, or working in kids' playrooms or somebody's office, or creating a system. I was the assistant at the Daily News for a year, and I reorganized that whole office. But there's a lot of things, people need. Some people just need their checkbook balanced every other month. Some people, one guy lived in a loft overlooking Union Square Park, and he wanted all his wires hidden away. So I would put, they have these like organizing covers for all your wires, really whatever they needed done.
It sounds like a great job, actually. I think that would be something I could get into.
It's fun.
Yeah, because I like to keep things neat and tidy, and wow, if I could get paid for it, that would be sensational. One of the things you reminded me of was when I was in Japan. I went to Japan a few times. I stayed in one of those capsule hotels. So that's why when you said
Wow.
that, the loft bed, see, that wouldn't bother me because I kind of like that. It was sort of like sleeping in a cocoon, But the capsules were really cool because they had TV. You had climate control in there for air conditioning and heat. The bed was super comfortable, and it was quiet. There seemed to be enough insulation in between the capsules, so you didn't hear anybody. You didn't hear anybody snoring or coming in and out, really. So I don't think I would mind that, but those, I don't think they would ever take off in the United States. I just don't think Americans would get into that. We still like our kind of standard hotel room with the full bed. You know what I mean? We have a sort of a minimum in this country.
Totally.
Now, how is the sort of micro apartments? Are they doing all right in New York? I mean, are people really going for it, or is it not as wonderful as it seems?
I think people are going for them. I know there were still openings when they opened. There were, I think, 40,000 people on the waiting list for the ones that were set aside for certain incomes. But I don't know if the other ones are selling, because when it opened, there were so many available, which I thought was surprising. But again, I think it's because it's too much money. If you're going to spend that money, that's not the point. I think the point of living small is to save money, not just to, you might want to just be green, but you're spending a lot of money to be green. It makes no sense.
Well, true. Yeah.
So many people contacted me wanting to find a really tiny place like mine, but they're few and far between.
So the places that they're advertising, you said, are like 300 square feet for a studio?
Yeah, I think that was the minimum.
And these are
Maybe a little
condos?
more
I
around.
mean, you actually buy them?
No, they're for rent.
They're for rent.
Rentals.
And they were renting for $2,000 a month.
Something like that. Yeah,
Wow.
there were different levels. But they have great amenities. They're multi-purpose furniture. They're modern. They're in kind of cool building. But, again, it's a lot of money for not a lot of space.
And especially too, if you're not a single, if you're two people, two people at 2,000 is 4,000. And for 4,000 a month, you can get someplace pretty decent, like a regular apartment, one bedroom or something like that. How is the book doing, by the way?
The book's doing great. It's really kind of a want-to guide. It's to motivate people whether you live in 90 square feet or 900 square feet. It's to kind of motivate you to help you do what you want. Because for me, the point of living in a smaller space was about making more time and having more time to do the things you love to do. And, when I was debating how I should write this book, I thought there are so many books on decluttering and how to get organized. I didn't want to write that book. And I went back and read so many of the emails I'd gotten from people, and they said, you've inspired me to downsize. And so a lot of the lessons in the book are really kind of how to fold sweaters, but why aren't you doing it right? Or why aren't you cleaning out that garage? And it's breaking it down and trying to make it easier to do these things, because stuff is really what's keeping us from doing what we love to do, because we're moving stuff, cleaning stuff, working to pay for stuff, and just trying to find more happiness in your life.
Well, I definitely can relate to that, because in about 2004, I had sort of an epiphany. It was originally from Boston. I live in Las Vegas now. And I was working in Boston. I was commuting. We had a particularly brutal winter. I got home. I had a 3-bedroom house, absolutely packed full of furniture and artwork and just stuff I had collected over 20 years. And I got home and I got the bill for the heating oil. And it was something ridiculous. It was that year, you probably remember, but it was that year when heating oil went to $4 a gallon. And,
oh, wow.
And I got the bill and I just thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm working. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. So I was single and living in this house alone. I just thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm working every day, commuting in this horrible weather just so I can pay to heat the house to keep my furniture warm. Something's got to go.
Right.
So within a couple of weeks, I called one of these places that it's like a consignment deal. They come and clean out your house, basically, and they sell everything off. They take their percentage and they give you the rest. So I cut it down to just, what do I need? Okay, the couch has got to stay. The TV needs to stay. The bed needs to stay. And the dining room table needs to stay. And that was about it. The artwork I kept just because I liked it. And artwork hanging on the wall doesn't take up much space, But right. Other than that, I got rid of all of the knickknacks, the display cabinets, you name it, bookcases, all this kind of crap, end tables, lamps, all this stuff. When that house emptied out, I felt like I had just lost 30 pounds. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I was jumping up and down, moving around, going, oh my God, isn't this wonderful? And I've never looked back. I moved to Las Vegas. The place is minimal now. If there's too much stuff in one spot, I've gone the other way now, where I was borderline hoarding to begin with. Now all of a sudden I'm going the opposite way. If there's too much clutter on the kitchen counter, I'm clearing it. Don't need that, throw it out. But you're right. Some people, to some people, it can be kind of almost a disease. Have you ever seen that show, Hoarders?
Oh, I've lived that show with clients.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's horrible. But it's true, because the more stuff you own, in truth, that stuff owns you.
Yes.
Because you're beholden to it. And it does feel great I'm not telling people to live in an empty room, but we look around, and the more rooms you have, the more stuff you buy to fill that space. It feels so good not to have to pay for it, because you're paying for square footage of stuff. Why are you paying to house stuff you don't need?
Well, especially in New York City. I mean, every inch is a fortune. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have clients who are paying for storage month after month for stuff they don't even know it's in storage.
Wow.
So often I've gone and helped them clean it out, and they get rid of most of it. They don't even need it, and then you save money because you get rid of your storage.
I think a lot of us, grew up with this attitude that you're supposed to buy a house and then fill it up. And that's the American dream. It always has been. And I think people are kind of reevaluating that idea now. Because I know my mother was really bad with collecting souvenirs and just stuff, any little, not even furniture, fill up with the furniture and then fill up every display cabinet, every inch of the display cabinet with some little tchotchke or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I hate tchotchkes.
Yeah, I
And
hate them
even
as well.
I have clients like with walls of books. I'm an author. Books are great, but they should be read, not sitting on a shelf collecting dust. I say share books, donate them, give them away. If there's, of course, books you love, and don't get rid of those, but, so much stuff. And you think about if you just take one shelf in your home and you add up the price of everything on a shelf or one room, and you think about the money, and it's not worth it.
Well, one of the good things, I suppose, about everybody having smartphones and pads now is that all that kind of stuff can just be in the palm of your hand, where before you really had to keep all those books if you wanted to read them. So by technology, we have downsized somewhat, but I think some people still have a ways to go. Well, listen, it'll keep you in business, right? Are you still doing that?
I am. I'm actually on Cape Cod for the summer, and between book tours, and I'm going to a lot of tiny house festivals, and I got a job at organizing an office.
Oh, super. Well, listen, Felice, we are out of time for this interview, but I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun talking about it. Best of luck with the book. The book is called 90 Lessons for Living Large in 90 Square Feet or More. I assume it's available on Amazon?
Yes, Amazon book, ebook, Barnes & Noble, my website, FeliceCohen.com.
FeliceCohen.com. Okay. All right, Felice, thank you once again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Go listen, download, and subscribe to The Douglas Coleman Show. It's available at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. Also on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. The Douglas Coleman Show is an internationally syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Our focus is on music artists, but we also feature producers, authors, directors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining. Again, it's available today at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. You can also connect with them on Facebook at Douglas Coleman Show 1, follow on Twitter at Douglas Coleman 3, and you can even find them on TuneIn Radio. Again, that's the Douglas Coleman Show at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS, iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, and more. Go listen, download, subscribe, and share with your social networks today.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome Chad Meek. Hello, Chad. How are you?
Hi, Doug. I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. You have written a book called Giant Rock, and there is a movie. Is the movie in the works, or is it still in planning dream stage?
I guess they call it pre-production, which means that I haven't got the money yet.
Yeah, I've heard that story from many, many screenwriters. What kind of a budget are you estimating it would take to make this film?
You know, originally I started off, I put one for $15 million, and then the Warner Brothers producers who came in originally, they were claiming it was $30 million. And then I went through a couple other, hit and miss things with a group out of China, which they said it was 45, and then a group out of Russia was 40 million. It's somewhere between 15 and 45 million. The reality of it, the whole thing is and it's kind of scary because it's an epic, and we go from 1930 to 63. So I think there's 110 speaking parts. So it's not just your, normal independent, film. It's a giant leap. It really is. But in order to get the entirety of it in, and even just and this is just the first episode. It's actually set up for a trilogy. That's probably what's going to cost, because you have costumes and you have different models of cars. I mean, you can only do so much stuff with CGI and special effects. So I'm, kind of hamstrung a little bit, but if real money showed up, I had a guy, Clint Eastwood's business partner, he'd contacted us, and they wanted to do shows, a movie $5 million or less is what their whole thing is. They didn't want to go out, so I guess there's no real pat answer, Doug, just other than, I would be willing to do it for 15 to 20 million and see what I could get done.
It's interesting because I've never talked to anybody who is in that league of movie making. Most of the people that I have on are screenwriters who are doing indie stuff that, sort of 5 million or less.
Yes.
But I assume that the way you would shop it around is the same, right? It's just you're going to be shopping to people with deeper pockets.
Precisely. And, the economics of a 5 million or less, as far as, you're really talking about something with a very limited distribution, or even if you could even find distribution at that level. This is a feature film. This is not a shock doc, that style of, or any of the other genres as far as that, that kind of thing. It's a feature film. And so that's one of the problems that you have, because even if you have a budget of 40 million, and you actually get distribution, you're going to be looking at probably another 40 or 50 million dollars in, P&A or prints and advertising, what the studios would do. So our goal is to not have the studios put the money up for the film, which actually there's been some possibilities with that. The problem I have with that is that, they're going to own it. They're going to control, the whole creative process. And I have legacy issues with this film, because there's some family members in it for me. And of course so I really know what this thing's supposed to look like. And, I went through that with the producers at the, Warner Brothers Scar Tissues, as they wanted to do a bunch of really stupid stuff, as far as, additions to the script. And when I questioned them, they got offended. And I thought, oh God, this is not really what I want. I kind of wanted to do a kind of collaborative thing, but they had their own idea, and they had it justified. One of the guys had worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, and he also was on Indiana Temple of Doom. So that kind of action adventure, which this is more subtle. This is actually, metaphysical UFO. It's just more, our film's more subtle, and that wasn't a good fit. But I didn't find that out till later.
Do you have any track record? I mean, have you made a film before?
I just made shorts, and I've done stuff for nonprofit. But the answer is no. I've never done a feature film. The conversations I've had have been very, very interesting, and it goes from Quentin Tarantino and what have you. You just got to find the right people that will back you and will believe you that you're not a complete idiot and that you believe in your vision. That's getting the movie made. Distribution, that's another leg up. The whole industry is divided in between, commercial distribution and getting the film made. And what we want to do eventually as a company but we want to morph into being kind of a micro studio, taking writer directors, catching their vision. And in essence, I don't know who's got the better vision as far as with somebody who actually physically had written it. Had I not had wrote it, it'd be a completely different thing. And even what we're doing here, we'll bring in some pretty good people. And people say, well, who's going to direct? Well, I mean, I would like to direct it. I'd like to find a strong producer. And there are producers who are out there who primarily focus on first-time writer-directors. That would be my wish list. But obviously, there's other sensibilities. But I don't want to begin by negotiating against myself. So if it comes down to, well, we'll put up the money if you bring in this producer or you bring in this director. Well, I'd like to have the option of getting something in exchange versus laying down for them. And that's essentially what I'm trying to avoid is not just become a victim, of the whole shebang, which is a difficult task.
Well, yeah, it is. And I also think it's a balancing act. You'll have to give up something to get something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, yeah. And I'm willing to obviously to do that. It's just not concrete. Here's a scenario. Okay. And this is early on. And these guys, they were, let me classify them as tier 2 or 3 or B producers. But what came up was this guy had a dream that he wanted to make a modification on the script. And I said, hey, sure. I mean, we want to move the story forward. I'm always interested in new ideas, but the one that he came up with, he wanted my uncle and my aunt to get in a argument, and she runs out the door in the car, and he follows her in a plane and runs her off the road. And he had had this vivid dream of that whole thing. And I go, I got a problem with that. I said, that's when our relationship, I guess, blew up, because I guess their attitude was, this is what we're doing for you. And, but I tried to explain as gingerly as I could that I had legacy issues on that particular thing, but it was open to other ideas. But the other idea they had was they wanted to wire in Kramer from Seinfeld into my film and wanted me to find a place because they had owed him a favor. And again, it gets back into that whole, give. But that was something before me. But I couldn't place. So I began to question who these people were and what my film would end up like. And so there were some issues.
I mean, I remember some TV shows, and once the film was made, it was nothing like the original writer's vision of it. I mean,
Good Will Hunting is an example.
Good Will Hunting.
they got an Academy Award for the writing, and they both admitted it wasn't the film that they wrote, and the film that was out had completely transitioned. So perhaps maybe in their case it worked out for them, but I don't know. But they were extremely frustrated with the whole process. So, but again, they're cry them a river. Both of them. That was their start.
Well, but I think it is par for course, because I've heard this story many times from people, from writers who, there's the balance between money and artistic integrity is a very precarious one. And the people with the money don't care.
Don't care at all.
No, they don't, because they're just looking for something that's going to make money. And they don't really care how much the story changes. The story is obviously very personal to you, but to them, it's not.
It's not. No. Yeah, and definitely, it is a delicate balancing act as far as that. But I'm completely open. Early on, I mean, we had already made some changes as far as that, which actually I could see that moved the story forward. And there was some dead space in between here and there, et cetera, and I got it. And so we changed it. But this one was a little different. And I said, no. I said, and then you get to the point where what you don't want to do is at some point you got to stand up and, for the creative side of yourself. And for me, it was really important at that juncture to do that. And I found out later that they were going to vend it off to other studios. So I believe what their original goal is to get it to a certain place to vend it off.
Who would you want to star in the movie if you had your pick?
There's all kinds of interesting people. Some of the celebrities I've been looking at is I originally wrote one part for Penelope Cruz. I thought, well, this would be a perfect one for Hispanic woman. But since then, the ages and demographics which are critical, and moviegoers are traditionally younger, as we all know. There's a kill zone between 14 and 27. So and this is really a bummer for women, who are older, is that whole demographic thing. So like a choice would be Matt Damon. He'd be a great person. He actually believes in the subject matter. He likes, obviously UFOs and things like that. But again, he's a little older, so I'm going to have to scale down. So I'll have to look at somebody a little less, but and so as far as the women, some of the main character actresses, I thought, okay, I was studying Selena Gomez. I thought, that would be, the goal is to attach a star, and then all else follows.
Right.
You'll get a whole bunch of
Sure.
people. If you get a star on a movie poster, then consequently, then it's makes your life a lot easier for distribution. But Jessica Alba would be one for her. There's two characters that are going to be integral to this whole thing. One is, of course, George,
right?
Which George Van Tassel, my uncle. That's critical. But there's another character called Chase, which is composite of my own self, and he's a younger thing that I believe that the whole movie really. It's based on true events, but the younger character, and I'm going to be extraordinarily vulnerable to a younger child actor. As far as I'd be looking at somebody around, say, around 11 or 12, and I've got some ideas that who I'd like to do. But the show is really, I mean, it's got wide demographics. In fact, there's a grandmother in there, and then of course, you can go from essentially 60 down. But the more I read the book and the screenplay, the recognition of this hinges on me finding the right young actor.
Well, would that be up to you, or would that be up to the studio to decide who's going to star?
Well, if I
in it?
make the film, it'll be up to me. If I'm able to get incidentally, I've raised my background's in oil and gas and mining and investment banking. So it's not something, the whole money aspect is not anything too foreign for me as far as raising the cash. I have some contacts that have expressed an interest too. It just depends on how it unfolds. But having said that, my goal is to essentially get the movie made and then work a co-distribution deal with one of the majors. As far as that would be cool. That's the goal.
It's a lofty ambition, because let's assume that $40 million falls out of the sky into your lap so that you could physically make the film. But the distribution isn't something you could tackle on your own, I don't think, even if you had all the money, because they've kind of got that locked up, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. And there's various tiers within that, like there's, there of course is the major distribution outlets like, Disney and Warner and those, but then you get into the, Searchlights and some of the sub,
you can't really buy your way into the distribution.
Yes.
Aspect of it.
So it's a tricky business. One of the things I've been very glad that's happened, originally this was 3 years ago, we were actually in meetings in Hollywood and they were bringing in various people, department heads and all that stuff. And I'm almost glad that it didn't happen then, believe it or not, because, since then there's the industry has changed dramatically. It really has changed. I think we're going to hit the cycle about right where people are kind of sick of the Transformers, and what essentially has happened in the industry is that we get Netflix style of movies, and they're good, but they're really set up for Netflix, not for the theaters.
Let's move on. Let's just talk about your uncle for a little bit, because he seems to be the catalyst for this, right? Now, he has passed away, I assume?
1978, he passed.
Okay. Now, how old was he when he passed away?
Oh, God, 1910. Good question. He was born in 1910, so
60-something.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your uncle, and also tell us a little bit about your relationship with your uncle. I assume I don't know exactly how old you are, but you were a kid when he was around and had his adventure, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I'm 58 years old, just turned 58.
Okay.
So I grew up near him. My father and my grandmother lived with my Uncle George and Eva because my father was considerably younger than his sister Eva. But they lived with him for years. And then when they went out to the desert and homesteaded all that stuff out near Palm Springs, about 40 miles away, my father went and had actually helped build some of the Integratron, this time machine, as far as that. So, his daughters, George's daughters were with the little minutia, was actually the same age as my father. So it was kind of that. So I played with with George's grandkids, and George was very, very, very extraordinarily nice guy, charming, larger than life. And for a kid out in the, 3 and 4 years old, growing up out in the desert, he was larger than life. He was huge. And, imagine you'd barely get reception out of a TV, and your uncle would be talking on the television about these subjects. So he was very, very well respected in most circles, and he's revered in the UFO circles. It's amazing as far as the amount of people that I've ran into all over the world and who with intimate knowledge. But so he was, I guess, I would call him the leader of this whole thing right after Roswell. As far as him goes, I kind of teased him a lot because kept on telling him that I didn't believe in flying saucers. And I said, I kept on telling him that you're pulling my leg. As a little kid, I remember that. And he would just smile at me. He goes, well, you will one day. And so the day came, fairly quickly after that. But at any rate, yeah, interesting guy. I don't know what I can say other than, the guy conducted experiments on all kinds of different things, including time travel. He was light years ahead of everybody. Self-educated. His own airplane mechanic. He was relied upon with Howard Hughes as a flight engineer and what have you. And so, amazing man.
He was obviously the inspiration for the book.
Yes.
When did you start on the book?
I started on the book in, actually, I wrote the screenplay first.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I did. I wrote the screenplay. And how that evolved was there was an actor who lived next door to me. And I had just mentioned, on the beach, I'd mentioned to him as far as what was going on with no intention. I had no intention of doing anything, with it. It was just a conversation. He goes, you ought to write a screenplay. And so I did. And I think to his surprise, he goes, this is really good. And he says, I'd like to be a part of it. And I said, hey, I'm a neophyte. I didn't know anything about it. I was kind of semi-retired, living down here where I live in Mexico. So consequently, he says, let me get this to a couple of friends. And that's kind of how that evolved. Well, after that blew apart, I wanted to write the sequel. And I thought, well, it might be easier just to write the sequel and combine the screenplay into one book. So that's what I did. I kind of did it backwards. I've heard of other people doing it, doing it that way too. People like Chris Christopherson read it. He says he immediately signed a letter of interest, wanted to participate with it, and a couple other actors also had heard about it in the rumor mill and actually approached me as wanted to be attached to it because they one way or the other got the script. And one guy, Rudolph Martin, who he does series television, what have you, is a German guy, and he's actually perfect for one of my German characters, Frank Kreitzer. He told me, he says, don't worry, he says, this will get done. He says, all good stories get done one way or the other. But as far as my uncle goes, he was a regular on the, he courted people like, Howard Hughes was one of his good friends. People like Jackie Gleason, a whole cast of characters, eclectic characters would end up out at the largest freestanding boulder out in the middle of nowhere and hanging out with my uncle, along with a lot of the military and some of the, black ops people, too.
We are quickly running out of time for this interview, but just can you tell us briefly the synopsis of the story? We've sort of talked about everything but the story.
Story's about here's a brief synopsis. It really is about I refer to them as reluctant messiahs. Most of all the characters are out to get at the truth, and my uncle included, to basically bring this time of discovery to people's mainstream eye and get fought with every step of the way. But they continue against tremendous odds. Most of that stuff actually is based on truth. So the synopsis is reluctant messiahs who don't give up and do the right thing, not perfect people. It's all based around contact with UFOs. And
our government trying to convince people that they didn't exist, right?
Right. That was their whole thing. So this has been the big fight, and it's a continual fight even today with most of us as far as disclosure, the government not admitting that there are extraterrestrials or UFOs. So along with it, there's all the human relation activity that goes along with them. So when it hits the ground running, it's very, very, very exciting from start to finish. I believe once it gets done, I think people will be happy with it.
Where do you think all the aliens are hiding? Because they're not in our solar system.
Actually, I believe they are. And they're not hiding. They're actually they're in plain view. It's just, people have a difficulty seeing them. And, that's the biggest problem that we have is the perceptual. It's just like the Indians, when they saw they couldn't see Christopher Columbus's boats, nor could they see Cortez's ships, because it was out of their known reality. But they're out there, and they've been out there forever. In fact, you can go to the Bible, ancient astronauts, Sumerians, etc. NASA had one, and they cut the feet off. So, and this kind of feeds into to a lot of this whole thing. I think that actually adds the popularity, to the movie. Are they or are they not? And depending on where you're at, you can take either position. And of course, I don't, as a filmmaker, I don't care. What I want you to do is just see the movie.
Well, right. So, but you're saying that the alien life may not manifest itself into any kind of a form that we can see. They're ostensibly invisible. to us.
No, they're ostensibly invisible to many people, but not to people. And in fact, I've had, I give several talks on the subject. People come to me, people in suits, and says, I didn't want to admit it, but I'd seen, this thing here and what have you. Didn't understand what I was seeing. I said, that's pretty much the biggest thing. They just don't understand what they're seeing or what they're looking at. So as far as invisibility, that's, again, it's a perceptual issue. And, but I for one have, I've had probably in excess of 30 visual of UFOs. I've actually, had my own experience with direct visual and physical contact with them. So, and my uncle did too. And several of my family members also did. So for us, it's pretty much, it's a given for us, and we know what we saw. And I'm basically, business science background, but this is something that I haven't been able to explain away in any kind of reasonable context.
Well, now you said that you saw them, your father saw them, and your uncle saw them. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So why do you think the extraterrestrials picked your family?
I think it had to do with remoteness. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We were next to we believe that the giant rock, which was made of granite, was actually a conductor that could be seen from long distances. It was adjacent to a 6-mile natural landing strip out in the middle of the desert. So I think that, if you're going to go somewhere, you're not going to go to
Central Park, right?
Right. But actually, when you John Lennon, Muhammad Ali, Mick Jagger, you name it, they've actually John Lennon, he claims he was abducted. Muhammad Ali said he saw one in Central Park.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
Yeah. So these people they're not fools, and they have no reason to, I guess, stretch the truth in any way, shape, or form. Right. They just stated what they saw, what they believe they saw.
Well, Chad, listen, this has been a very informative interview, but we are really out of time, so I'm going to have to cut it off. The book is called Giant Rock, and the movie hopefully will be made, will also be called Giant Rock.
Giant Rock the movie. We wanted to make
Oh, I see. Giant Rock the movie. Yeah. Okay. All right. But the book is available on Amazon. How's it doing? Is it a good seller?
It's done fairly well. Surprisingly, science fiction is not a big seller, but I had enough sales on Amazon that a print publisher started publishing the book.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And
hey, Doug, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Best of luck with getting the movie off the ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Felice Cohen and Chad Meek. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
To the mile, you've got to